Do you recognize these symptoms? When we have too much time to complete a task, we tend to slack off until the task becomes urgent. Then, when meeting the deadline gets nearly impossible, we become super productive and miraculously pull it off, getting the job done just in time. The saying, work expands so as to fill the time available for its completion, is Parkinson's Law. The quintessential example in action is school assignments. Even with a full month to complete an assignment, most people work very unproductively, if at all, until the last few days when they pull one or two all-nighters and manage to get it done right at the last minute. If you are like one of those students, you know that working on the assignment filled up the whole time available, even if only psychologically, despite the fact that you spent little time in actual productive work. Had you invested this short amount of time right after the assignment was handed to you, you would have completed it much sooner and could have spent the remaining time much more joyfully, either truly resting or working more productively on other stuff. How can we get rid of this unproductive behavior and beat Parkinson's Law? There are 6 surefire ways to do this. Point number 1. Break down your tasks and deadlines. Parkinson's Law always strikes the hardest when you have enormous tasks with faraway deadlines. The best way to fix this is, of course, breaking those big monolithic tasks into many smaller, bite-sized tasks along with several intermediate deadlines to complete them. In addition to showing how you are progressing, frequent achievable deadlines create a mild sense of urgency during the whole duration of your work, keeping you naturally engaged and focused on what needs to be done. This method works great indeed, but note that you still need to take those intermediate deadlines seriously, which is not always easy. Point number 2. Know what done means. It's not always easy to know for sure when a task is finished. The more of a perfectionist you are, the most likely you're a victim of Parkinson's Law. There's always one more little thing to add, one little refinement to be made, isn't there? Sure, I am all for aiming for greater quality, but the hard part is knowing where to draw the line so we don't spend a lot of time overdoing it. If you suffer from this same problem, the trick is to be as specific as you can about them and then simply stop when you complete them. Point number 3. Set clear boundaries. Most of the time, Parkinson's Law kicks in when we're doing too much stuff at the same time. Our days become a jumble of tasks when hardly any ever gets completely finished. And with the huge amount of distractions that tend to creep in, it only gets worse. To avoid this, we must work on them one at a time by corralling our tasks using time boxes. Get a countdown timer and set a time limit to work on them. Another great way of setting boundaries is by clearly separating between work and leisure. If you restrict the time available for work, you'll learn to fit all your work into these boundaries. My favorite technique to keep work boundaries well defined is the time budget, where you define how much time you spend on each area of your life. Point number 4. Challenge yourself. A tight time limit or deadline forces your brain to figure out ways to get it done in the time available. So it's time to stop adding hidden safety buffers when you estimate and allocate time for your tasks. What works here is to set challenging deadlines for yourself. Not too challenging, but mildly challenging, I'd say. The trick here is that they must be still believable. Take those time boxes you set for yourself, like I mentioned in point number 3, and now shrink them. Can you do the same task 10% faster? Maybe a little more perhaps? As soon as you set an expectation, an estimate for the duration of a task, this estimate becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The task will take the expected time as per Parkinson's Law, so take advantage of that. Point number 5. Create incentives to finish early. One reason Parkinson's Law is so prevalent is that people rarely have the right incentives to finish early. Finished early? Here's more work for you. And you're fast. Guess we can bring the deadline forward next time. Even without pointy-haired bosses around, sticking to the current task as long as possible is often desirable, as it can act as a security blanket. Maybe you're avoiding your next task because it's too daunting, for example. So, if you finish early, give yourself many rewards. Take a quick break, browse the web, go for a walk, do whatever takes your fancy, and enjoy the feeling of having deserved it. The key here is to associate rewards with results, not with the time spent. So, don't fool yourself. Point number 6. Know what's next. Lastly, something that happens too often is hanging on too long to a task solely because we don't know exactly what to do next. Most of the time, the cognitive effort in planning tasks is much higher than that required to actually carry them out. One thing that I always strive to do is separate planning from doing and make sure to always have a few next actions in the pipeline so you can keep the momentum going and avoid having to stop to reassess what you should be doing. For a quick recap, break down your tasks and deadlines. Know what done means. Set clear boundaries. Challenge yourself. Create incentives to finish early. Know what's next.